I got a question for you.
Yes.
What do you think when you go into a medical office for, any type of provider?
Yeah.
And the clinician is obviously unhealthy.
Oh, themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's concerning. It's a negative, like, ooh, okay. The person isn't following whatever they're going to preach, likely. Possibly. I have a theory that, like, from a brand standpoint, and you're a brand, I'm a brand, Abbott's a brand, from a brand standpoint, every interaction either adds to or subtracts from your impression of that. And so that clinician who's themselves unhealthy, it's a notch down. Like, it's ooh, okay. Same thing if they're slovenly or the office is slovenly.
Yeah.
I'm super judgy though. So like, you don't want me walking around anything that
You
care
are
about.
pretty judgy.
I'm really judgy.
What's a food you absolutely will not eat?
I eat everything. I will not.
Head cheese?
I don't even know what that actually is.
Braunschweiger?
What in them would be repulsing?
It's like some kind of ground up amalgamation of meats.
Pretty much. If I don't know, my rule, the rule in my house as it relates to my kids, which I've now adopted, is if you don't know what it is, eat it. Because we travel a ton.
You adopted that rule, or you adopted your kids?
I adopted the rule, and the kids wish they were adopted by someone
else because they're living on Braunschweiger.
No, because we travel all the time, and it's like you go to these sort of it's usually like breakfast. You're at this buffets, and there's this thing, and you know what it is, and I'm like, I'm just gonna put that on my plate. And the kid, it's good. It's good. I believe until they die from eating. Drinking antifreeze, which you shouldn't do that. Yeah. I mean, if you don't know what that is, like, please don't. But anyway, no, it's good.
That's not medical advice, is it?
Don't drink antifreeze, or if you don't know what it is, eat it.
Yes. The answer is yes.
That is medical advice, isn't it? So somehow.
Yeah. So we talked about, you've talked about a few times, Advent.
Yep.
Your clinics, your ENT clinics across 20 locations.
My baby. It's my fourth child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was here in July, you had 15 offices. I think you were on the cusp of opening your 15th office.
Yeah.
Now you have 20.
Mm-hmm.
So in 5 months, you've increased by a third your locations.
Mm-hmm.
That is a monumental level of growth. It is also, which sounds really cool. With it comes some challenges.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, you've got to be a capable leader and you've got to have a competent team to lead.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of challenges? Actually, you shared on a previous episode that your clinicians don't always follow your own guidelines.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So managing that level of scale has to be challenging because managing a couple of clinicians in an office or a couple of team members in an office is enough of a headache.
Sure.
So just talk, it's intentionally broad.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that a little bit.
There's a lot to tell. Me being a leader and having a capable team, the capable team is why we're doing what we're doing, honestly. Me being a leader at this point is, it's helpful. And I think at this point I'm most helpful by sort of being judgmental, being, kind of helping to point to which direction we're kind of moving at this point. But part of it is, I think the key to success for us and the key to, I guess, my ability to lead is articulating with clarity, what's essential. This, how do we do certain things, and what are the must-haves and what are the nice-to-have. So my clinicians at Advent, I mean, the only way that Advent can be growing the way that we're growing is that there's consistency within all of our clinics. And that's not normal within medicine. Typically in medicine, every clinician's their own artist, and they're going to do things their own way, and so forth and so on. So at Advent, we call it our proven clinical process. There is a methodology, a way that we'll treat our patients, and that the core of that if you're a clinician, you have to be following that. And there are other examples of that in other aspects of the organization. So that's kind of how we achieve, kind of consistency, scale, growth. And honestly, for me, we talked about it previously, purpose is what drives me. There are so many people out in the world who are suffering, in my opinion, needlessly suffering from conditions that there are simple solutions to treat. Oral appliance therapy is an example of one of those options and treatments, but there are many others. And at this point, it's just simply trying to connect the dots between them and potential solutions.
So what challenges do you face? I think that was the question.
What challenges do we not face?
On a weekly basis, so I would imagine you spend a lot of time in meetings every month.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So what are some of the topics that are covered there? I mean, before you answer that, I hear in dentistry, right? So dental service organizations, DSOs. Mm-hmm. The sole practitioner looks at them and says, "You're the bad guys."
Sure.
They've emphasized standardization, much like you're talking about.
Correct.
Reproducibility of processes and systems, and that's how they grow at the rate that they do.
Yep.
And it's a rapidly accelerating trend in dentistry.
Yep.
So this person that's over here going, "Well, I am an artist, more than anything else," they're getting left in the dust.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess you asked about the challenges, and the challenges are constant, all coming in all directions. I mean, the biggest challenge we have, that I have, that we'll continue to have, is managing people, and so that's where while DSOs and individual dentists and dentist office are technically doing the same thing, it's really different things when you think about it. And meaning that I've not been part of a DSO, but I would assume there's much more emphasis on standardization at the expense of individual free will. Now, you might ask, from this person who just talked about individual free will and how important that is, how can I be now espousing this standardization? And I'd say, because, how do you say this? Because I say it's good. No, because it's my way. It makes it because I do view this. I have a lot of analogies, but I view this as basically, if you kind of riff with me for a second, is you're in Phoenix or Scottsdale or in your town. There are restaurants that are started by a chef, and it's one place, and then there's McDonald's, as a specific example, or other Panera, you pick it. I don't really care. They're both serving food to people. The individual restaurant should be able, from a pure quality of the food, taste of the food, they should be able to beat McDonald's, as a specific example, every day of the week. Yet McDonald's serves billions of people, and this restaurant here serves maybe dozens of people. Which one's better? Which one's worse? Who deserves to exist? Who deserves to die? They can both exist. It's a weird thing for me to say. So at Advent, we have a powerful process that we can bring our patients through. In my opinion, it's the best treatment process for breathing triangle issues that exists. Yeah. But an individual theoretically should be able to, I don't know how you say it, they have more control over the nuances in the treatment than I do sitting where I sit in my organization. So there's I guess where I'm going is there's trade-offs, and for me, when I kind of burned the boats, why I was burning the boats is that I know in my heart of hearts that expanding reach to the services that we offer is more important than my free will, or my individual wants and needs are subservient to the needs of my patients. Mm-hmm. And then you sort of, that allows us to move in a forward direction.
Let's go a little deeper though. And why I think this is important is managing people, for example, that you mentioned, is one of the most challenging things, or if not the most challenging thing.
Sure.
And that's something that clinicians face no matter where they're practicing or what discipline they're in.
Sure.
It's probably something that most businesses face.
Absolutely.
And your growth trajectory in this field has been pretty astronomical. And I would like to take a deeper dive into what issues you encounter with people management, and how do you ensure as an organization that you're able to address those issues and keep growing?
Yeah, I think as we've grown, or what's allowed us to grow, part of that is having standard processes, not just for how we practice medicine, but for how we manage people, for all important aspects of the organization. We've defined what sort of success looks like. And more recently, this year in particular, we're doing something that's called the culture of winning, which what that means is, yeah. Yes.
So obviously the acronym is COW. Uh-huh. And then earlier you shared one that was PCP.
Okay.
I just like the idea of merging these two together somehow.
I get you. I get you.
COW's on PCP.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
So culture of winning.
Culture of winning. What's the most important ingredient in the culture of winning is having a scoreboard. So in my opinion, I always think in sports analogies. I've designed this entire business around kind of a sports mindset, and that's something that also translates really well to business and to people, because people want to know if they are, they may not want to know. They need to know if they're winning or losing. Mm-hmm. Are you winning or losing in your role? Are you doing a good job, or are we not? And so that to me has been a very important aspect of things. It's uncomfortable sometimes when you have to have the conversations with people who aren't performing. So taking what usually is subjective and making it objective. And so how can I take your performance and put it into a number or a couple of numbers to say, hey, we could do better, or whatever the case may be.
Give me this secret sauce there. What are those metrics? How are you measuring them, and how are you reporting on them?
Well, it depends on, so basically there's a methodology to, I don't know how you best describe this. Is somebody, for our clinicians, are you following our clinical model? So when we see a new patient, there's sort of an understanding or expected flow through, they need a CT scan to evaluate their sinus. There's a certain number of patients that usually go in that direction, down to procedures, or over in the throat category, sleep studies, oral appliances, CPAP, all that kind of stuff. So it's basically being able to track that, engage that, compared to your peers, and sort of seeing, okay, what are we seeing, or what's different with this provider or this clinic versus other clinics. That's something we've only been able to do at the size we're at. Previously, you could try to do that. You could do it subjectively. You can kind of say, Joe, I'm not sure you're really following this. Let's have a talk. At this point, we've gotten big enough where I can't know subjectively if Joe gets it or not. So we need to be able to see into that. Mm-hmm. So that's at our size, and as we move forward, that's going to be a helpful, sort of concept. At smaller sizes, so I think most people who are listening are not, running organizations of our size. So at an individual clinic, or say you have a few different clinics, how do you, what's the secret sauce there? It's very much this. It's very much the same, although theoretically it should be easier, because you can use objective and subjective and measures and methods to kind of evaluate how somebody's performing. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing I have zero management training. I'm not a good manager. Therefore, I have people who have that training or experience who are able to do that, and that's crucial. And I think and it is a very under cherished skill set. Doing something is hard. Managing somebody else or somebody's else doing something is in many ways harder. So trying to get something done without putting your hands on it, that's a really big challenge. Picking it up is sort of the natural human tendency. And I have that tendency too, if that makes sense. But that tendency, it's kind of weird, especially in the dental community, which is similar to the medical community, is that there's we cherish doers. Mm-hmm. For a dentist who's seeing or has a great patient, whatever you guys call it, roster, and is actually doing high volume work, that's great. That's a different skill set than a dentist that's overseeing a group of dentists or hygienists doing work. It's different. That's what I've had to force myself to do is to get out of.
And what's kind of unfortunate in that situation too is with a doer, mm-hmm. right? Then they expect their team to be doers.
Sure.
So as a result, everybody's just doing stuff.
Correct.
That doesn't really further the business.
Right. Absolutely. I mean,
just produces and that's it. And there's a ceiling there.
there is a ceiling, and there's a book. It's called E-Myth Revisited.
Yes.
That was my epiphany. I read that book in 2015. When I read that, the book, it basically just describes the entrepreneur's fate, which is basically the fate is eventually you create, if you're a successful entrepreneur, whether you're running a restaurant or a dental practice, you create a situation where there's so much volume and busyness that now you're a slave. Like you are at the center of that, and you've got to be, you're the only one who's capable of doing anything. Mm-hmm. And that's self-limiting. So then what ends up happening is you either burn out or you kind of check it down, and then you kind of, hover in the zone.
It's manageable, yeah.
So from when I read that book, and I was like, okay, that is my life right now. And it wasn't a bad life. It was more like, but I've optimized what I can do as an individual. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, okay, how can I take what has been very successful and now grow it? I don't even if grow is the right next thought in my head, but it's more of like, how do I get myself out of prison that I've created for myself? And then I read a book called Traction, which is about EOS, which has actually become a big phenomenon over time. That was the recipe to get out of prison for me. That was the recipe for me in particular. I mean, for anybody who's listening who is looking for a simple methodology to whatever you want to call it, to move in a forward direction. Mm-hmm. It's very much similar to other things, but it's very, very actionable. And what Absolutely. It will force you to do is it will force you to define your vision. What is the vision? If we're talking to one dentist in one office, what is your vision? What are you here to do? Mm-hmm. Do you have the right people in the right seats? And just those simple things are the things that that make big things happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. Both great books too. Agreed. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the right people in the right seats,
yep.
You have to be able to identify that you're doing that with your COW mm-hmm. because you're objectively measuring their performance. But some of those people, when you incorporated that, they'd probably been there for some time.
Sure.
And some of those people scored low.
Mm-hmm.
What do? They're part of the culture. They're part of the team. They're like family.
Right.
And now you've got to coach them up or out.
That's it. Up or out.
But you can't. They're Why? Part of the family.
No, that's where, and it is. I mean, and again, comfort is the enemy of right. growth. And so yet, is it uncomfortable to identify this sort of situation? Is it uncomfortable to up or out? Kind of thing. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Do most people choose to avoid it? Yep. If you avoid it, what's going to happen? Your current fate is what you've just decided. The mantra that has been in my head, I'll say for the last, we'll call it 18 months, probably 2 years, is all disappointment exists in the gap between expectations and reality. So on this individual, it is getting crystal clear on what expectations are, getting crystal clear on an understanding of what we believe to be the current reality, and getting crystal clear on what the delta is between current reality and expectations, and then figuring out what are we doing about that. Mm-hmm. That to me, and it sounds so simple, and maybe I'm just sort of overly enamored with it, but it's almost a cheat code. I've developed, it's so simple for me to just keep that in the back of my head. And so when I'm getting annoyed or frustrated, all I just need to think about is, okay, so am I disappointed? Am I frustrated? What's going on here? Mm-hmm. Were my expectations about whatever it is unrealistic? Is reality true? Is there truly a gap here or not? And then what am I doing about it? Am I going to lower my expectations? That's an option. I'm going to keep my expectations, but I'm going to now try to sort of close that gap. So anyway.
But that once again puts the onus on the individual.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. I mean, it has to be. It always is going to come back to an individual taking individual action. There is no magic. There is no secret sauce. There is no. I think EOS is a bit of magic because it's such a very straightforward way. I'm a big proponent of organizations using something like that because it's a toolbox that you can use. That it's just if you do these things, you will be successful. Now, when I say do, you have to do them actually do them, not
consistently over time.
Over time, and you can't just go through the motions. You can't have avoid having that conversation about right people, right seats. You can't avoid the conversations about get it, want it. I mean, I guess a lot of these concepts are there. This is just EOS, but get it, want it, capacity to do it. So if you're in a position in my company, do you get it? And when I say get it, the hardest thing in a growing organization like Advent is your job description today is going to change. So in 12 months from now, what the organization needs from you in your position is going to be entirely different. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to understand that and think about that and think about, do you truly get that? Do you get that concept?
Yeah.
Do you want it? Yeah. Because it's not necessarily, it's not for the faint of heart. Mm-hmm. And then I'd say, brutal honesty, do you have the capacity to do it? And this isn't a me judging you, it's you judging yourself or us judging you.
Yeah.
That's hard stuff. And but it's hard stuff. But the reason I like sports and sports analogies so much is that's the kind of hard stuff that is part and parcel with sports in general. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, there is nothing more beautiful in this world than a team of individuals coming together to do something greater than any of those individuals could do by themselves. Mm-hmm. So as much as I cherish, and I do cherish the power of the individual, I cherish the power of the team so much more. And so we talked about Advent, and we're growing and we're big and so forth and so on. And I'd say, for me to be part of an organization that's a powerful team as a whole, but is made of a team of teams, and each of those teams is simply trying to get better. Every single one of my clinics is a team that's just trying to get better and do better for their patients. And now we have enough of those clinics that we can compare them to each other, and that's a beautiful thing. I have departments that are simply trying to be better. And that I believe in what's my job these days? Yeah, I see patients sometimes. I lead the organization. That's great. What I'm here on this earth to do is to serve our patients, to unlock the potential in our patients. But actually, I believe my job on the earth right now is to unlock the potential of the leaders in my organization, the people in my organization. And the way that you unlock potential is you set high bars and you do whatever you can to get somebody to achieve that high bar. Mm-hmm. The way you destroy individuals is you set low bars and you let them rot. And generally speaking, in society today, we've set the bar so low as a society for our individuals that what we're seeing is what happens when people rot. Organizations, big and small, universities, those low bars are killing us as a society. Mm-hmm. And so I guess the nice thing with having an organization that's big and getting bigger is that in my little small piece of the world is we can create an existence that is, in my opinion, the way it should be done, which is a beautiful thing. And the best thing is we get to do it in service of others.
That bar being so low,
mm-hmm.
In universities you mentioned,
sure,
in many companies,
mm-hmm.
I think a real problem there then is when you're competing on a global scale, or you're a dental practice, not literally global scale, but on a grander scale, and a DSO moves in up the street from you.
Sure.
What are you going to do? Right? I mean, because if you're not practicing any of these principles that are in these books that we've discussed, that you've discussed, you don't have a chance, right?
Oh, you have more power than that DSO has. David and Goliath. That's all I'd say. David and Goliath. The power of the individual. When I say individual, I mean individuals, but I also mean sort of agile teams. Sure. So yeah, it's what I was saying before is like, there is, shame on you if you're running an office that is unable to compete with a true Goliath. A Goliath, in my opinion, is an organization that's like a behemoth that acts and thinks like a behemoth. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, and I could be wrong, and I'm definitely biased, Advent is not a Goliath. We're big, we're getting bigger, but we are David, and we have that mindset, and we've had that mindset since day one. So to me, I don't know how you say it. At the end of the day, there are a lot of... Everybody who's walking around in this country is going to need, some aspect of dental care. And, if I were that DSO, what I'd be afraid of are the Davids out there who are definitely going to be more agile than we're going to be able to be, are going to definitely be able to be more outside the box thinkers and doers than we're going to be able to be, are going to be definitely going to be able to have a much more person to person relationship that we're going to be. So you should destroy those DSOs by your individual power. That's what I'd recommend.
There's actually a section in the book that I wrote on this very topic where I use the David and Goliath analogy.
Yeah.
I spoke with a dentist that trained a DSO to incorporate sleep.
Right.
And they've got 100 practitioners or whatever they had and never really took off. I mean, the volume was high compared to one office, but you've got 10 offices, 10 locations or something. And his key takeaway was the individual practitioner should always beat Goliath.
Absolutely.
The agility, the ability to differentiate themselves with sleep in particular, sets them in a unique position where they should win every time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I 100% agree. And, I think, again, part of with what we're doing as we grow is part of my job is to make sure we stay David. Amazon, I think they still have this thing is day one, which is Jeff Bezos' attempt to say, it's always, if you keep that day one mindset, it's powerful. If you can stay David and build yourself up to a Goliath sort of capacity, that's powerful. And I would be, how do you say that's fierce and that's worthy and honorable. And that's what I'm trying to do in my organization. But a typical DSO, there's nothing. I mean, again, I just go back to my, food analogies.
Yeah.
It's just
there's a need for McDonald's.
There's a need for that. It's fine. And I guess I think it is.
Understood.
It's not worth somebody's time to sit there and worry about, they're going to come in and what's going to happen, and just focus on the patients that are in front of you. Focus on the people that you can get in front of you. Do a good job on those individuals, and you're going to do just fine.
Control what you can control.
Absolutely.
Be focused. Do the right thing. Keep at it. And you're going to win. And, David and Goliath, David in some ways is the black sheep. And that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about doing what needs to be done, regardless of what the herd is telling you, regardless of what school taught you.
Sure.
We're looking at the real world and what the needs are in front of you in your community.
Yeah, and using the weapons that you have. I mean, it's like, how did David bring Goliath down? He did it with his slingshot, which doesn't seem like it's a powerful weapon, but it is when it's wielded by somebody who knows how to use that slingshot. So using what you have, I think the other thing, and I guess there's a lot of people. I think about universities. I think about how I was trained. I think there's education that's out in the world. That's nice. It's great. But then there's the real world. You kind of sit in these ivory towers. You get all this stuff. And I'm sure dental school is the same thing. And then you go out in the world, and then it's no, this is different. And I think the nice thing about the age that we live in, the wonderful, glorious thing about the age that we live in, is the access to information has never been easier. And so honestly, for me and my organization, like everything I've learned from a business standpoint, I've learned it from listening to podcasts, reading books, studying. I think the other key to success, a growth mindset is necessary, mandatory, but then the quest for knowledge, information is powerful. That is it's a trainable skill set. Some people may have more of a natural inclination or not, but I'll guarantee you how to lose, which if you want to lose, stop growing, stop learning. I won't guarantee that you'll win by learning and trying to grow, but I'll guarantee you that you're going to do the best that you can do.
Take someone in any position, you pick it at your office or one of your offices, and they're a C-level performer, right? FD, CBA. They're a C-level performer. Can any of the managers, leaders in the organization, can they take that person from a C to an A?
Unlikely. Yeah.
Can they take them from C to a B?
Still unlikely, but more possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this in my experience leading teams. You could take people up like one letter grade, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Peter principle, whether it's Dunning-Kruger, whether it's just ego, or even really just competency. I used to work with this guy, couldn't stand the guy.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, I would assign a task to someone, and they would drop the proverbial ball. And this guy would, when I'd share with him my frustration, he'd say, that person is never going to be able to dunk the basketball. They're just, they're 5'5". They're never going to be able to dunk the basketball.
Sure.
So it's your fault. This frustration is your fault. You shouldn't dish that person the ball.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they're never going to, I think you can bump them up a letter grade, never 2 letter grades. I mean, people have capacity for change.
Sure.
It's rare that someone has that sort of second order change.
Yeah.
They found God, or
Right.
whatever it might be, but people can change, but they have it or they don't. And
Sure.
you can coach it out of them, but if they don't have it, if
Yeah.
that's it.
But I absolutely agree.
Okay.
I mean, to me, that's a sort of the C in the GWC, get it, want a capacity to do it. Although I'd say, it's a fool's errand to try to, make somebody into something they can't be. But some of my happiest moments are basically taking somebody who's, let's say, a C player and giving them the tools to and the tools are it could be sort of a conversation or coaching. It could simply be for me how I'm thinking about it is a process that works. So like in our organization, I keep going back to this proven clinical process. I'm not calling my providers C players, but I'm just simply saying that it's almost there in football. There's something called a system quarterback, which is somebody that's kind of average, but you put him in a system that works, and that average can win a Super Bowl. Versus you have superstar quarterback, you put them on sort of an average team, they're never going to win a Super Bowl. Yeah. So anyway, I think that is kind of back to kind of where I was going. I think having that sort of true team that's coming together. Sometimes that team, the most beautiful thing that can happen is a team that will take an individual player whose sort of capabilities are, they don't know, they're not Michael Jordan, they're not dunking, but it's like, what can you do to help us here? And then let's figure out a way to get you doing that thing. I don't know why I'm thinking about Dennis Rodman when I'm thinking about that. Somebody who didn't play basketball. I think he's in the Hall of Fame for doing the stuff that nobody else could do. Was he the player that Michael Jordan was? No.
Of course not.
Did he allow Michael Jordan to win championships? Absolutely. So there's stuff that Dennis Rodman could do that Michael Jordan could never do. And together they dominated. And that to me is a beautiful thing. I think that the challenge is that, to me, the key, what's the key there? You have to, in this example, you have to have somebody who understands the power of the team, who wants to be part of that. If you have an individual, to me, poison is having an individual who has low capacity and is incapable of being a team player. Mm-hmm. That is somebody, at least I'll just speak for my organization, mm-hmm. that is somebody you need to go. You cannot be here. And if we didn't, and shame on us for not identifying that.
You've got to be able to discern someone being a critical thinker and trying to poke holes mm-hmm. and look at this from all angles versus someone who really is just toxic and is a naysayer.
Sure. Yeah, and those toxic, I mean, the nice thing, again, we get kind of back to these.
Just real quick,
sure.
because I think oftentimes in a small business, mm-hmm. people look at someone, the business owner, leader, practice owner, can look at someone who is an iconoclast as being someone who's not on board.
Sure.
When what they're really doing is they're providing potentially a huge amount of value to be able to improve the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was just thinking, like, for us, when we were smaller, there were individuals that did great work that really showed that they were incapable of being a team player. And what went from a sort of an individual, when you're in a small practice, you can kind of it's very much a family feeling, and you can kind of allow for a little bit of whatever, sort of a variety of different ways of doing things. But, I think back to that team concept, if somebody's, as we got a little bit bigger, is identifying those individuals, and it's simply like, this isn't going to work in a move forward direction, which is really hard. But I know for folks who are in small practices, that there's almost like this natural cage that gets created from a to go from where they are. If they want to grow, they're going to have to sort of let go of some people, or and move on.
Yeah.
And it's hard. That's hard. That's not comforting. That's a very uncomfortable kind of a concept. But it's, at the end of the day, it depends on what you want to do. But if growth is and growth is, I mean, we talk about growth, and we talk about, I mean, Advent's growing. That's great for us. But growth should not be the growth is a very uncomfortable place to be, and I would not recommend it. It is not for the faint of heart. And so there's sort of lifestyle businesses. Nothing wrong with a lifestyle business. I would be miserable in lifestyle business. I was sort of kind of part of a lifestyle business. That ain't for me. So for me, growth is a mandatory thing for me. And so, fortunately, unfortunately, that becomes that way for the organization. But I mean, again, I feel like there's this mindset of, if you have one office and that's your choice, that there's something wrong with that. No, I guess I'd say no. If that's your choice and you're making a conscious choice, congratulations, and have a happy life. And it's great. But yeah.
But don't complain then about the person around the corner that has 20 offices.
Yeah.
Don't complain about how you would do this and you would do that if only this and that and all these contingencies. If you secretly harbor a desire to be those others, they've done it, you can do it.
I agree. I mean, I agree both ways, but yeah, either you're making a choice in your life and deal with the consequences of the choices that you make. Yeah. And yeah, it's sort of I think it's just human nature to do that thing where it's just envy is a deadly sin. I think it's on that list.
I think it's one of the 7 dwarfs.
Is it 7 dwarf? It could be. Dopey, droopy, sleepy, and envy. Yeah, he's the coolest one. He's got the tattoos all over his skull. He's got the skull tattoos. But envy, envy is it's a natural human. I mean, we all have those tendencies. It's just understanding, sort of, where they come from. And I mean, at the end of the day, I'd say, focus on what you're doing and do it well, and keep up the good work. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah.
Well, there's no I in team.
TEA. Yeah, you're right. There is no I in team.
But there is an I in I gotta go.
All right. We'll see you.
Adios. So what's different between Advent and a cult?
It's probably the same ingredients. Better leadership.